Lekin froze when his mother slammed the door, shouting, "Go live in the streets if you don't respect this family." The Thanksgiving feast, the one he had helped plan, was now just cold turkey and broken dreams. Obi, his father, looked away, pretending not to see the tears in his son's eyes. In that moment, Lekin realized the people who should have loved him unconditionally had written him off entirely. Lekin lay on his friend's small couch, staring at the ceiling because sleep refused to come. His stomach growled, but he ignored it. What hurt more was the memory of his mother pushing him out of the house and shouting that he should go live in the streets. The words kept replaying in his head like a wound that refused to close. He pulled the thin blanket tighter around himself, trying to stop the shaking in his chest. It wasn't the cold. It was the heartbreak. As he closed his eyes, flashbacks washed over him. He remembered the long nights working 2, sometimes 3 jobs. He remembered standing behind shop counters, running deliveries in the hot sun, fixing computers in the evenings. Every coin he earned, he brought home. He helped pay the bills. He paid his siblings' school fees when his parents couldn't. He even skipped meals so everyone else could eat. But none of that mattered to his mother. She never said thank you, never recognized how hard he worked. Instead, every time he came home tired, she called him lazy. Her voice still echoed painfully. "You never do enough. You're useless." Lekin felt a sharp sting in his chest as those words mixed with the memory of her slamming the door in his face. He wondered how someone he loved so much could dismiss him so easily. He thought of his father too. How Obi pretended not to see what was happening. How he looked away when Lekin needed him most. That silence hurt deeper than any insult. His mind whispered a painful truth. All my sacrifices, worth nothing. A tear rolled down his cheek, not because he was weak, but because he finally realized he had been fighting alone for a family that didn't value him. He wrapped his arms around himself, the loneliness louder than the ticking clock on the wall. His friend slept peacefully nearby, unaware of the storm inside Lekin. And in that quiet room, Lekin made a silent promise. He would carry this pain, but he would not let it break him. He would turn it into strength. One day, when life turned around, the same people who pushed him out would remember this night and regret it. But for now, all he had was an empty stomach, a borrowed couch, and a heart learning how to let go of those who never cared. Lekin woke up the next morning on the same couch, still feeling the pain of the night before, but something inside him had changed. He was tired of waiting for his parents to see his worth. If they couldn't recognize his efforts, he would create a life where he no longer needed their approval. With nothing but his old phone and a small laptop he bought years ago, he began searching for online work. He had always been good with computers, good at solving problems, good at explaining complex ideas in simple ways. He just never believed those skills could change his life. But now he had no choice except to try. He started reading about freelance consulting. The first night, he barely understood anything, but he didn't stop. He watched tutorials until his eyes burned. He taught himself coding basics, marketing tricks, and digital strategies. Every night, while the world slept, Lekin sat alone with the blue glow of the screen lighting his tired face. He practiced building websites, creating marketing plans, and studying how online businesses worked. It was slow, frustrating, and lonely, but he pushed himself because he knew this was his only door to freedom. He remembered how in Africa, people always found smart ways to survive, trading, negotiating, fixing things with simple tools. Lekin carried that same spirit. He learned how trading platforms worked, especially the ones popular across West Africa. He studied charts, trends, and market news. Sometimes he lost money in the beginning, but instead of giving up, he learned from every mistake. He wrote down strategies. He followed successful traders quietly. Slowly, his small investments began to grow. Soon, he created a profile online and offered his services. At first, no one believed in him. But one client took a chance. Lekin worked day and night for that project, giving his best ideas, building smart solutions, and keeping communication clear. When he completed it, the client was shocked by his intelligence and recommended him to others. More small jobs came than bigger ones. People loved how strategic he was, how fast he understood problems, and how simple he made everything seem. Weeks turned into months. Lekin's nights were filled with typing, coding, planning, and researching. His days were filled with online meetings and project deadlines. He barely slept, but he didn't complain. His earnings began to grow quietly. He started saving little by little, watching his account rise for the first time in his life. And all of this happened in silence. His parents had no idea. They still thought he was struggling, still believed he was nothing. But Lekin knew something they didn't know. He was finally building a life that no one could take away from him. Back at home, Lekin's absence didn't bother anyone. In fact, his younger siblings almost enjoyed it. They had grown up spoiled, always getting the best food, the newest clothes, the newest phones, while Lekin was the one working behind the scenes to make those things possible. But they never saw that. They believed everything came from their parents, and they believed Lekin was simply the weak one of the family. So when he stopped coming around, they didn't miss him, they mocked him. One afternoon, while Lekin was working on a project in his small rented room, his phone buzzed with a message from a neighbor. It was a short video of his siblings sitting in the living room. They were laughing loudly, bragging about their little successes, waving around small amounts of money like it was gold. One of them said, "At least we're not sleeping in the streets like Lekin." The others burst into laughter, repeating the words again and again like it was the funniest thing in the world. Lekin watched quietly. No angif, no shouting, just a long, heavy silence inside him. He knew they didn't understand his struggles. They didn't know the nights he spent working just to make sure they had school uniforms. They didn't know the times he gave up buying new shoes so they could get new ones. They didn't know the sacrifices he made, and honestly they didn't care. His siblings had grown up believing life was easy because Lekin had always made it easier for them without ever mentioning it. He placed the phone down slowly and took a deep breath. Instead of letting their words crush him, he let them wake something stronger inside him. He told himself that he didn't need to defend his name. He didn't need to explain his struggles. He didn't need to argue with people who didn't even understand the meaning of sacrifice. His silence became his shield. His focus became his weapon. That evening he sat at his desk again, opened his laptop, and continued working. Every insult from home pushed him harder. Every laugh gave him more reason to succeed. He didn't want revenge. He didn't want to embarrass them. He just wanted a life where their opinions no longer mattered. He promised himself he would rise so high that their mockery would one day turn into shock. He whispered quietly in his heart, "One day you will see." Lekin had been working quietly for months, taking small jobs, learning fast, and building a name for himself online. Most clients only saw his profile picture and his work samples, never imagining the young man behind the screen lived in a tiny room and ate the cheapest meals to save money. But one evening, everything changed. An email arrived from a multinational African tech company. They had seen one of his projects and wanted to know if he could handle something bigger, something complex, something important. Lekin read the message 3 times, his hands shaking slightly. This was the kind of opportunity people prayed for. He replied politely, trying to sound confident even though his heart was racing. After a few calls, the company hired him for a major project. It was more challenging than anything he had ever worked on. But instead of being scared, Lekin felt alive. He stayed up night after night, working with full focus, studying new tools, solving problems that professionals with years of experience struggled with. Sometimes he slept only 2 hours. Sometimes he forgot to eat. But with every step he felt himself growing stronger, smarter, and more capable. When the project was finally complete, he submitted it with a quiet hope. The company reviewed it for days, and Lekin thought maybe he had failed. Then one morning, his email exploded with messages. The team praised his work. They called it genius, innovative, and beyond expectations. They asked if he could join more long-term projects. And then he saw the payment confirmation, $500,000, $500,000, from one single project. Lekin stared at the screen, unable to breathe for a moment. This wasn't small money. This wasn't lucky money. This was the proof that all his sleepless nights, all the pain, all the rejection meant something. He didn't scream, didn't jump, didn't celebrate loudly. He simply closed his eyes and whispered a small thank you to God, and to his own hardworking self. Life began to change fast. He rented a small office space, nothing fancy, but enough to feel professional. He bought a better laptop, a proper chair, and good internet. He started taking international calls, discussing ideas with people from different countries who respected his talent. Slowly he built a small team, young people like him hungry to grow. He trained them, guided them, encouraged them. Soon, Lekin was no longer just a freelancer. He was becoming a leader, a strategist, someone companies trusted with million-dollar ideas. The audience watching his story would feel a warm satisfaction, because the boy who once slept hungry on a couch was now stepping into power. The underdog was transforming, not by miracle, but by pure hard work and unstoppable determination. A full year passed, and Lekin's life looked nothing like before. He had his own office, a growing team, and money flowing in from clients he once only dreamed of working with. But even with all the success, there was a part of him that stayed quiet, the part that still remembered that night his family threw him out. He tried to bury the pain under work, but some wounds sit deep. One afternoon his phone buzzed with a message. It was an invitation from his mother's social group, an open call for the annual family Thanksgiving dinner. The same event where he had been humiliated and pushed out like nothing. Lekin stared at the message for a long time. His first reaction was anger. Why would they invite him now? Did they suddenly remember he existed? Did they think he was still the same weak boy who left with nothing? He paced around his office, conflicting emotions rising inside him. A small part of him wanted to go, to show them how much he had changed, but another part, the wounded part, didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing him. He remembered the cold night on the couch, the empty stomach, the sharp words from his mother, the silence from his father. Those memories wrapped around him like heavy chains. He sat down and closed his eyes. Childhood memories came rushing in. Him helping his mother in the kitchen, him running around the compound with his siblings, the laughter, the small joys. He once believed that family was safety, but the same people who had once held his tiny hands had pushed him away without thinking twice. That pain still lived inside him. Finally, he made a quiet decision. He wouldn't attend. Not yet, but he wanted to see. He wanted to understand who they were without him. So on Thanksgiving evening, he drove to the street where his family lived, parking his car far enough to stay hidden. He watched from a distance as people entered the house laughing and carrying food. The warm lights through the windows made the place look peaceful, like nothing bad had ever happened there. Lekin sat quietly in his car, his heart caught between past wounds and present strength. He didn't hate them, but he hadn't healed enough to face them either. So he stayed in the shadows, observing silently. And in that still moment, he understood something important. His success had given him power, but his heart still needed time to heal. He watched for a while longer, then drove away, not with anger, but with a deep, quiet acceptance. He wasn't the same boy anymore. He was someone new, someone stronger. And one day, he would face them, but only on his own terms. A few days after Thanksgiving, Lekin decided it was time to handle something important. His investments had grown far more than he ever expected. The businesses he advised were paying him huge amounts. His trading profits were rising every month. His company was now taking on international clients. Everything he had built in quiet silence had finally turned into something massive. So early one morning, dressed simply in a clean shirt and trousers, he walked into one of the biggest banks in the city. He moved calmly, like any normal customer, holding a small folder under his arm. No bodyguards, no fancy clothes, no expensive watch. Just Lekin, the same boy who once slept on a couch with nothing. The bank was busy, people rushing around, but when he approached the customer service desk and mentioned he needed to speak with a senior manager, the staff directed him respectfully to a private office. The manager greeted him politely, expecting nothing unusual. But when Lekin opened his folder and placed several documents on the table, the manager's expression slowly changed. Lekin handed him a statement from one of his investment accounts, showing millions in profits. Then another, showing returns from his consulting company. Then projections from his annual earnings, calculated carefully by his accountant. The manager blinked repeatedly, leaning forward as if his eyes were deceiving him. He clicked through the digital files Lekin transferred. The numbers were shocking. When the system finished loading the automated yearly projection, the screen displayed it clearly. $25 million. The manager's mouth opened slightly. He shifted in his chair, his voice suddenly more respectful, almost nervous. "Sir, is this correct?" he asked quietly. Lekin simply nodded. There was no excitement on his face, no prideful bragging. Just calm confidence. He had worked hard for this. He had earned every dollar. And for the first time, someone was seeing the true size of what he had built. The manager cleared his throat and stood up straight, now treating Lekin like a VIP client. He asked if Lekin needed a special account, private banking services, or security for his funds. Lekin smiled politely and said he only wanted to deposit his earnings and continue with his business. The manager rushed to assist personally. As Lekin walked out of the bank, sunlight hit his face gently. He didn't feel the need to call his parents or prove anything to anyone. But deep inside, he felt a quiet vindication. The same family who mocked him, the same siblings who laughed, the same siblings who laughed, the same parents who told him to go live in the streets, had no idea that the boy they rejected had turned into a man worth more than all of them combined. He stepped outside with a small, subtle smile, not out of pride, but out of strength, because now he truly knew his worth. When Lekin finally decided to visit home, he didn't announce anything. He didn't tell his parents he was coming or give any sign that his life had changed. He simply walked toward the family compound during another small gathering his mother had organized. Laughter filled the place, neighbors sat around, children ran about, and his parents stood proudly in the center like they owned the whole world. Lekin paused outside for a moment, taking a steady breath before entering. The moment he stepped inside, a few neighbors recognized him and greeted him gently, surprised to see him after so long. But his parents looked at him with the same cold eyes he remembered. His mother folded her arms and whispered loudly, making sure people heard. "Ah, look who finally came back. Did the streets become too hard?" Some neighbors chuckled softly, unsure how to react. His father joined in with a smirk, saying, "Maybe he wants food. You know how these children are. They go out, fail, and come crawling back." Lekin didn't react. He simply walked further inside, calm and silent, even as his siblings exchanged mocking glances behind him. His parents continued bragging to their guests, talking about how successful they were, how well they managed their home, how their other children were doing so much better than Lekin. They spoke loudly, making sure everyone noticed the difference between him and the rest of the family. It almost felt like they were performing. One neighbor, an elderly man who always liked Lekin, asked kindly, "My son, where have you been? We haven't seen you in a long time." Before Lekin could answer, his mother interrupted, laughing, "Don't mind him. He went to chase life and ended up in the streets. We warned him." The words cut deep, but Lekin stood strong. For a moment he looked around the room, at the familiar walls, the old furniture, the faces of people who once watched him grow up. Then he slowly stepped closer to his parents, his voice calm and steady. "You told me to live in the streets," he began softly. The entire room fell silent. His parents froze, shocked that he spoke at all. Lekin continued, "So I did. I went out there with nothing. I slept hungry. I worked day and night. I built everything with my own hands." His mother swallowed hard, suddenly nervous. His father shifted uncomfortably. "But those streets you mocked, they taught me more than either of you ever could." The neighbors stared wide-eyed. His siblings stopped smiling. His parents' faces drained of confidence, their pride cracking like broken glass. Lekin didn't shout. He didn't insult them. He simply told the truth, with a strength they never expected. And in that moment, the entire room understood that the boy they rejected was no longer the same. He had returned not for their approval, but to finally speak the words they needed to hear. After that night of confrontation, Lekin didn't leave immediately. Instead, he stayed quietly, carrying himself with a calm confidence that his family had never seen before. He set up his laptop in the living room, opened his accounts, and began making calls. At first, his parents didn't understand what he was doing. He was just sitting there, they thought, like he had nowhere to go. Still the same boy they had always dismissed. But the truth was very different. Lekin was about to show them a glimpse of the life they had never imagined. He connected with clients from across Africa and beyond, discussing major business deals worth millions. Companies sought his advice, investors listened to his strategies, and one after another he closed deals that would make even seasoned businessmen take notice. From the same home that once pushed him out, Lekin orchestrated multi-million-dollar transactions, negotiating contracts with ease, analyzing markets, and giving instructions to his growing team. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't show off. He simply worked. Neighbors began to notice. Some came by, curious about why Lekin had returned. They peeked through the windows and saw him speaking confidently to people who clearly respected him. His presence, calm but commanding, filled the house. His extended family, who once mocked him, now whispered to each other, unsure of what they were seeing. The very boy they had dismissed was now a man running a business that handled millions of dollars. Lekin's parents watched in stunned silence. They had spent years flaunting their success, comparing themselves to him. And now they were forced to see that the boy they scorned was the one living a life they could only dream of. There was no shouting, no humiliation, no dramatic scene, just quiet, undeniable proof of his achievements. Every call he made, every deal he closed, every strategic decision he executed right in front of them was a reminder of what they had lost. Yet Lekin didn't gloat. He didn't laugh at them or take pleasure in their shock. He knew true respect came not from making others feel small, but from existing in the power and life he had built with his own hands. He continued working calmly, letting the numbers, the contracts, and the results speak for themselves. After a long evening of calls and meetings that had left his parents and neighbors stunned, Lekin sat down for a quiet dinner with his family. The food looked the same, the house smelled the same, but everything felt different. He ate calmly, observing their faces, the pride, the shock, the awkwardness. He didn't laugh. He didn't argue. He simply sat there, polite, controlled, and fully aware of the power he now held. His mother watched him closely, eyes narrowing as if she could read every thought behind his calm expression. After a few moments, she finally spoke, her voice trembling slightly with a mix of authority and fear. "Lekin, are you really going to leave again? Don't you want to stay? Don't you want us?" She paused, searching his face for the boy she once knew. Lekin looked up, his gaze steady and gentle, but filled with a quiet strength she had never seen before. "I gave you everything I could," he said softly, choosing each word carefully. "I worked, I sacrificed, I tried to build a life that included all of you. But now, I live for me." His voice was calm, not angry, yet it carried the weight of every rejection, every insult, every sleepless night he had endured. He stood up slowly, pushing his chair back, and walked to the door. There was no shouting, no dramatic scene, just the quiet authority of someone who knew his worth. His parents opened their mouths to speak again, but he didn't turn around. He didn't need their apologies or their approval. He simply walked out. The neighbors and extended family watched from a distance, unsure whether to speak, act, or intervene. Lekin's siblings stared silently, the mockery of the past now replaced by awe and confusion. In every step he took away from the house, he carried more than his success. He carried freedom. Outside, the cool evening air felt different, almost like a reward. Lekin took a deep breath and smiled softly to himself. He no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. He no longer needed to fight for recognition from people who had refused to see his value. For the first time in his life, he felt completely unshackled. As he walked toward his car, his eyes reflected a calm, unshakable freedom. The boy who had been told to go live in the streets was now a man who chose his own path, his own dignity, and his own life. And in that silent goodbye, Lekin felt closure. Not from revenge, not from triumph over others, but from the strength and self-respect he had earned with every sacrifice, every sleepless night, and every silent step he had taken toward building the life he truly deserved. Months later, Lekin's life had grown beyond the walls of his old neighborhood. He traveled across Africa, visiting cities and villages, meeting young people with big dreams but few opportunities. He sat with them in small classrooms, community centers, and open-air markets, sharing knowledge he had gained through years of struggle, sleepless nights, and relentless determination. He guided them on starting businesses, managing money, and believing in their own abilities, showing that success wasn't about where you came from, but how hard you were willing to work. Everywhere he went, Lekin's presence inspired hope. In Lagos, he helped a small tech startup secure funding. In Accra, he advised young traders on investments that could change their families' lives. In Nairobi, he met artisans who had talent but no direction, and he helped them build a small cooperative that allowed their products to reach international markets. Lekin was not just earning money. He was creating opportunities, shaping futures, and spreading the lessons he had learned the hard way. During his travels, he often found quiet moments to himself. One evening, after a long day of meetings and workshops, he sat alone on a hill overlooking the horizon. The sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and gold. For the first time in a long time, Lekin smiled. Not because of wealth, not because of fame, not because of his accomplishments, but because he felt free. Free from the judgments, free from the expectations, free from the family that had once rejected him. He realized he no longer needed their validation. His value was defined by his own life, his own efforts, and his own heart. As the wind brushed gently across his face, Lekin whispered to himself, almost as a promise, almost as a reflection, "They taught me I was nothing. I proved I could be everything." In that moment, the journey came full circle. The boy who had once slept hungry on a friend's couch had become a man who built a life of purpose, power, and meaning. He had transformed pain into strength, rejection into opportunity, and neglect into impact. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lekin knew that this was just the beginning of a life he had built entirely on his own terms, with dignity, vision, and unwavering belief in himself.